Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this virtual panel event exploring a range of topics on mental health and the justice system. My name is Alyssa Maurice. I'm the Research Associate and Interim Director of the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy at Stockton University. The mission of the Hughes Center is to provide a forum for the discussion of important policy issues. What better way to facilitate a conversation around the mental health crisis within our court system than to bring professionals together who are making strides to address it? You'll hear more about our panelists before each of their presentations, but suffice to say, we have a truly excellent lineup of national and local experts to dive into this topic. New Jersey Supreme Court Justice Lee Solomon, President of the State Bar Association Timothy McGoffrin, Judge Nan Waller of Portland, Oregon, Judge James Bianco of Los Angeles, California, Judge Mark Sanson and Ayanna James, both based here in South Jersey. Each of these panelists is paving the way for a justice system that prioritizes recovery for people who are struggling with behavioral health disorders. I want to thank all of our panelists for being here and for taking the time to share their insight with us. For more information about the work of the Hughes Center and for more events like this, please visit our website at stockton.edu/Hughes Center. With that said, I will now hand it over to our moderator for this event, who will outline the program for us. Judge Julio Mendez is a former Atlantic Cape May assignment judge. He retired in 2022 after serving more than 20 years in the New Jersey judiciary, and he is now a senior contributing analyst for the Hughes Center. Please welcome Judge Mendez.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, and thank you for all the good work that you are doing on behalf of the Stockton University and the Hughes Center. What a wonderful lineup of speakers we have today. Six outstanding experts that will talk about various aspects of the mental health crisis and how it is impacting our justice system. The program will have three segments. The first segment is going to deal with issues of wellness and the law. And we have two speakers in that segment, Justice Solomon and the president of the State Bar Association, Timothy McGoffrin. The second segment will move on to issues of how to address the mental health challenges within the court system. And we'll have a national perspective from two outstanding judges that were both members of the National Task Force created by the National Conference of Chief Justices to examine the issue of mental health. And Judge Nan Waller from Oregon and Judge Bianco from Los Angeles, California are doing great work in this area. And then the third segment, it will deal with specific programs that are very successful programs and initiatives locally in the state of New Jersey and in Atlantic County. And we have two speakers, Ileana James from Jewish Family Services, and she will highlight the work of that service agency, particularly providing services for the municipal courts in Atlantic County with individuals with mental health issues and other related issues. And our very own Mark Sampson, who was a longtime recovery court judge here in Atlantic County, and now is vice chair of the JOBS program, statewide program, a cutting-edge program seeking to obtain jobs for people that are either graduating from recovery court or are on probation. Having said that, I am now pleased to introduce Justice Solomon, and I want to add this at the outset. I could speak for about an hour on each one of these phenomenal speakers today, outlining their bio, so I have reduced substantially the introduction. Justice Solomon has a distinguished career of public service at all levels and in all branches of government. He served as a trial judge in the court system, in the Family, Civil, and Criminal Division. He served as a presiding judge and then as an assignment judge. And for the last 10 years, he has been a justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court. He also, in the legislative side, he was elected locally at the Haddon Heights Borough Council. He was in the Board of Freeholders, or now Commissioners of Camden County, and for 5 years served in the New Jersey General Assembly. Under the executive branch, he was in Governor Christie's cabinet, president of the Board of Public Utilities, and also county prosecutor in Camden County for 5 years, and deputy U.S. attorney prior to that. In May of 2023, when Chief Justice Stuart Rabner announced the formation of the special committee that would develop recommendations to address the mental health concerns related to attorneys, judges, and other members of the legal community, the Chief Justice called upon Justice Salomon to serve as chair of that committee. The Supreme Court Committee on Wellness in the Law. And the committee has been now operating and working for the last year. And in that capacity, Justice Salomon comes to speak to us today. Justice Salomon, welcome to the Hughes Center. Thank you very much for participating, sir.
Thank you, Judge Mendez. It's great to see you again. Thank you, Alyssa. And thank you to William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy. I hate when people say he's an expert, because a lot of what I'm going to say, I think, is common sense, and we've all lived it historically and personally. One of the things you can tell from my background, well, two things. One, I really couldn't hold any job for very long. And secondly, I'm very old. I've been around the block, and I've seen a lot of things. So a lot of what I'm going to say draws on that experience and that age. So forgive me, and I don't want to bore anybody, but let me start this way. We all noticed, because of the pandemic, the problems that were brought to the fore in our society regarding mental health, individually and communally. These are not problems that started with the pandemic in the sense of despair and isolation that was caused by it. These are things that have been evolving and growing over time. And you may disagree with the cause of it or the effect of some of these things, but I can tell you only from personal experience, again, I go back to my age, that many, many years ago, decades ago, our life was governed by social, personal interrelationships. Even as children, as young children, we dealt with each other and associated with each other because of direct contact, individual contact, reaching out to one another, doing things as simple as playing outside, choosing up teams, setting rules for games, all the things that socialized us and taught us about dealing with and interacting with a community of friends and colleagues, and even dealing with people we may not have agreed with or got along with, how to resolve those differences and issues. As time went by, a lot of those things that held us together individually and as communities began to dissipate. And I looked at technology, and technology is an incredible thing, a wonderful thing. It helps us, gives us access to information. It gives us access to each other, though not face-to-face in other ways. It enables us to do what we're doing today, to have a program put on remotely with people from all over the country in all regions without the need to travel, spend time, or maybe not be able to attend just because of geography. It's an incredible thing. It also has a downside, and that is that as time evolved and technology became more and more sophisticated, we no longer needed to have those individual personal interactions that developed the relationships that enabled us to survive, that enabled us to cope, that enabled us to accomplish the things we wanted to accomplish without a sense of isolation, competition, hostility, whatever. The ability to have people to lean on, friends to associate with, and people to turn to when we ran into difficulty. That has dissipated over time, because now we are able to communicate from long distances by Zoom, by text, by email. We now expect instant response, which has an impact on our professional lives and our personal lives as well, because we're no longer isolated in any way other than individually. That is, we can always be reached, we can always be contacted, and we always feel compelled to make an immediate response. We can't get away. We can't create that life balance that we used to be able to create by simply separating ourselves from work, separating ourselves from tension, and engaging with others like ourselves. So that the tools that we had as young law students, and lawyers coming up from, and even judges, coming up through the system has dissipated. I'll give you a perfect example. We now have a call of the list when a trial, we used to have a call of the list when trials were scheduled. And all of the trial lawyers gathered in the courtroom and we saw each other. We interacted with each other, adversaries, colleagues, friends, and we talked and occasionally shared coffee or lunch just because we were together in that environment. We had a motion day. When everybody showed up, your motions were called, you commiserated, you congratulated. All the things that used to happen no longer happen, or often, rarely happen, because so much of it is done technologically by what we're using today, Zoom or Teams or other methods. And so there is this, it has been this growing sense of isolation. The upside, of course, is that we have a lot more time to work and do work. We're not traveling. We're not spending time being inefficient. The downside and the cost is we're isolated, we're alone. When the pandemic struck, we were truly isolated and alone. And there was never, during that period of time, as I can recall, a sense of belonging and association. And those are, in many measures, important ingredients to our mental health and our mental well-being. This was true of everybody, but nobody more acutely than attorneys, judges, people in the legal profession, where there is a tremendous amount of stress, there's a tremendous amount of tension, there is tremendous competition from law school on forward. And in fact, we have consulted with Dr. Larry Richard, who is an expert in the field. I call him a recovering attorney, who is really a psychologist who does a lot of studying and writing and discussing lawyers and the legal profession and the impacts it has on us professionally, personally, and how we can resolve some of the issues we are confronted with. So as we went through the pandemic, and by the way, just so you know, as a member of the state Supreme Court, we see and hear all disciplinary matters that come up through the court system, lawyers and judges. It was clear to all of us, and particularly the Chief Justice, that as time went by, we were seeing more and more incidents of lawyers struggling, often, sometimes, I should say, not often, resulting in disbarment because of their inability to cope with their stressors of life and turning to things like drugs, alcohol, and being involved in other addictive, inappropriate behaviors. We saw more and more of it. And by the way, we all read the law journals and various articles when law or lawyers are involved. And we all saw the number of incidents of lawyers doing tragic things, even taking their own lives because of the stressors they're under. Imagine, as Dr. Richard always says, the things that make us good lawyers, skepticism, cynicism, doubt, questioning, imbues us with the things that make life at times very difficult. We even doubt ourselves. We always question ourselves. We always have that imposter syndrome that somehow, while we're doing the best we can, it's not quite good enough. And somebody's going to discover that. And we're going to be found out. We all suffer from it as lawyers. Well, I shouldn't say all. Most of us suffer from it as lawyers. Successful lawyers suffer from it acutely. And so we have all these things going on at the same time. And then the pandemic hits. And then we are further isolated. We notice this occurrence and reoccurrence in greater numbers of lawyers that clearly were struggling and having difficulty coping, and it was getting them into trouble. So the chief started our committee, the Supreme Court Committee on Wellness and the Law, to try to come up with some answers, programs, opportunities for attorneys, judges, and those having difficulties because of the things that I've mentioned, and you probably can add 100 things to them. It is a very mixed group of lawyers, judges, administrators, every viewpoint. And the first thing we had to do was educate ourselves. Yeah, we all had experience with what I'm talking about, personal experience. We'd all seen incidents of difficulties that lawyers, judges were suffering from. But we needed to educate ourselves about what's out there, what's happening, why is it happening, and what can we do to make it better. And one of the things we relied upon was a survey of attorneys. And I can tell you, I've read a lot of articles, as you probably have. One of the articles I read had 37 different categories of things that affected the mental well-being and stress on attorneys. But we ourselves have access to a state bar survey that discusses the various things that affect the sense of well-being among lawyers. Forgive me for turning pages because the numbers don't necessarily come to mind that quickly. And you can see some of them on the screen in front of you, what we found. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different categories of things that are evidence of stress, poor mental health, that are manifest in a variety of ways. You can see some of them and the things that we see on the Supreme Court that caused us the greatest concern and that prompted the Chief Justice to form this committee, which we tried to learn as much as we could. We had all different kinds of representatives on the committee, and we divided into subcommittees, various subcommittees, to begin to explore what's going on, why is it going on, and what can we do to help it. As a result of those efforts, we came up with a number of recommendations and a number of things. Let me just tell you, you see on the screen the challenges for lawyers. Let me just read off the ones that should come to mind. But 68% reported anxiety in the preceding 2 weeks. And I say 2 weeks. How about in the last 24 hours? 56% reported moderate or high levels of burnout. 49% moderate or high levels of isolation. 23% high prevalence of depressive symptoms. 28% they considered leaving the profession due to their mental health. All of the things that I mentioned at the beginning. You burn out if you don't ever have an escape or a break from what you're doing. Technology means that we just don't have an escape or a break. And it's scary. So we put together these subcommittees, and there are a couple of things I need to point out to you at the outset. I understand that at least for members of the bar, for law students, there's not necessarily a complete understanding of what's out there and available to them, for them to look to, consult with, a place to turn, a place to go. And we're trying to not just explain what those things are, but try to provide other resources. We have a lawyer's assistance program that is available to lawyers in distress. We now have a website, and we are hoping to have on that website, we do now, but expand, so that all of the resources available and all of the potential, not just places where you can turn for help, not just opportunities to be with, speak with, and seek support from your colleagues, but also things as basic as, what do I do if I need mental health services or addiction services, but I don't have, or I have limited insurance? Making available, or at least information available about what resources are out there for you. So in an effort to, we have the website, but in an effort to become better informed about what lawyers are encountering, dealing with, and what their issues are, we are conducting, and had one today, listening sessions by moderators who will discuss with, listen to lawyers in different regions of the state, divided by region, with moderators that will inform us as to what's going on, why it's going on, what are the resources and information that we need. We also have our assignment judges on the opening of court, which usually occurs in the late summer, early fall, who can speak with their judges and lawyers about the need to take care of your own wellness, your mental health needs, and to be able to reach out to each other, to our judges, to our assignment judges, and to the various programs that are out there to seek help when you need help, not to let things go to the point where it can't be recovered. So let me go through all of this is happening. These learning sessions, these listening sessions throughout the state have just begun, and they will be going on through our county bar associations, through the state bar association, and the assignment judges will be conducting programs in their various vicinages. And let me just run through it. I'm going to be a little bit repetitive. Some of the recommendations that our committee has come up with so far, that our assignment judges and other senior judicial leaders expand conversations about well-being in the legal profession, and that we highlight this in the opening of court every year, that the judiciary and other stakeholders develop continuing legal education courses so that lawyers become aware of what the issues are out there and what are the resources that are available and how to deal with problems when they arise. When you have an adversary, a colleague, a friend, a partner who is having difficulty, what do you do? But also to become informed about where you can send them. And one of the things that we initiated, and this did not exist before, in order to get assistance from the Lawyers Assistance Program, an individual had to essentially self-report. That's a very difficult step. It's a heroic step. It requires a lot of strength. But we now allow third-party reporting. Now so that a third party can raise the issue. There are confidentiality requirements, and confidentiality must be guaranteed. Those seeking assistance and those making a referral need to have that confidentiality. And the process and the means of securing it has been a very important part of this. So that attorneys, judges, people know that they are not going to be singled out in any way. And secondly, to make sure our judges and our lawyers know that people should not in any way be judged because they reached out and sought the assistance that they feel they need for the benefit of themselves, their families, the profession, and their clients. We are going to, or we have, and continue to seek input from law professionals through our targeted listening sessions, and providing ways for lawyers to share their own experiences and how they overcame some of their difficulties. Facilitate access to wellness resources for law professionals, including our dedicated webpage. I think Jessica's got it up there somewhere. It's at njcourts.gov website. We have our own website, informational website. The committee should continue to focus on ways to connect law professionals with mental health and well-being services through insurance options for individuals and firms, showing benefits that are available to members of the legal profession, resources available through NJLAP, and applications and other online resources. One of the significant gaps that existed. If you're a sole practitioner, I was a sole practitioner before I went to the bench, or actually before I became county prosecutor. I was a sole practitioner. Insurance benefits can be somewhat limited and difficult to come by. And the State Bar Association has been incredibly helpful in soliciting information that we can provide to law professionals about how they can get or find resources to get the assistance and treatment that they need. We're also developing a mission statement for the committee that will better define and explain what we're doing and what we hope to be doing. The couple of things that are tangible and some of which are happening, have happened, or will happen. We have discussed at some length the establishment of a system. So there has to be some uniformity. It has to be statewide. It's going to be in the hands or assignment judges, I suppose. And there is a need for confidentiality. And all of those things will take time to develop, hopefully not too much time. But requesting a brief adjournment to take care of individual or personal needs dealing with mental health, addiction, problems that encumber the ability to practice law. Confidentiality is essential, but also being able to, it's a tremendous burden to put on assignment judges. It's also a burden on clients and adversaries. So coming up with a system, how to do it, how to ensure that it is good, it is accurate, it's fulfilling a need, and being able to provide for or at least recommend the resources that are required. The other thing that has to go into that is, what do you do when a lawyer is on a leave of absence for any prolonged period of time? Succession planning. How do we deal with that? We're trying to encourage attorneys, I guess, to develop a plan of succession. Many firms have them in place for their lawyers and other lawyers that will take up the challenge. Sole practitioners and small firms do not. So the request for adjournment will be a huge program. The last thing that I want to mention, because I see our time is running short, many law students, those taking the bar and seeking admission to the bar, are deeply concerned about what we call question 12 on our background check, or the questionnaire for admittees to the bar. And it dealt with any past history of mental health or addiction issues. We are not looking for people who have faced, dealt with, and are treating their addiction, that have faced, dealt with, and are treating their mental health issues, and are competent and qualified to be attorneys. And our question has changed from have you ever to have you ever dealt with a problem that you are not resolving, that you are not receiving treatment for, that is not in control, so that it will give those applying for admission to the bar an understanding of what we are looking for: competence, qualification, quality, and understanding of their strengths and weaknesses, and the willingness and the strength to seek help when they need it. And that question on our bar admission application has been amended. I know I'm up against the time. I'll stop there. If I've left any over, Judge Mendez, please ask me any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Justice. What tremendous work you're doing and your committee is doing. And only in the first year of existence, started in May of last year. And I recall as assignment judge, I had many of these challenges and often didn't know where to turn. And one of the biggest issues is to encourage people to come forward and to get help. And the stigma of trying to get help becomes a big problem, and the intersection of ethics and issues that need to be resolved. So it's good work that you're doing, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you for being here and for participating in this program today. We're moving on to the president of the State Bar, Tim McCaffrey, and if you look at Tim's bio, you would know that mental health was one of his main agenda items when he became president of the State Bar about a year ago, and I know that this was an issue that as a lawyer growing up and participating in bar activities over the years, eventually leading up to being the president of the premier legal organization in the state of New Jersey with close to 20,000 members, It's something that has been on his agenda all along. And of course, as municipal court judge, a court that is in the front lines of many of these issues, I'm sure he confronted these issues. So may I introduce to you the president of the New Jersey State Bar Association, Timothy McGoffran. Thank you for being here, Tim.
Thank you, Judge Mendez, and thank you, Stockton University and the William Hughes Institute. And thank you, Justice Solomon and the Supreme Court of New Jersey. Last year, my predecessor was Geraldine Lawrence as president of the State Bar, and she started a little task force called Putting Lawyers First. And a lot of lawyers, and we're in the business of helping people, do a lot for other people. They do a lot for their clients. They have a lot of deadlines that are necessary from courts, clients, family, and oftentimes they look at themselves last and take care of themselves last. And as Justice Solomon pointed out in the a lot of those statistics from the study that we did with over 1,600 participants, the statistics were somewhat dire. And when you're talking about 10% people had of the respondents had suicidal ideations, that's 160 people that took that survey last year. And those are staggering numbers. And I know of two lawyers in the last year who unfortunately took their own lives. So this committee that the Supreme Court created and it is led by Justice Solomon has been doing really great work. And it's not just about lawyers, it's also judges and paralegals and all the people who work in the court system. There has been a tremendous amount of stress that has taken place on lawyers over the last 20 to 25 years. I think it's increased substantially. And I think we've all suffered from a little bit of PTSD, post-pandemic stress disorder, which brought all of this into a highlight. I really think many of the things that have come out of COVID with Zoom and the technology that we use now that, nobody even thought of 4 years ago, and now is in everyday life. It also really focused on the stress that goes on with individual attorneys and the court system and the judges who were going through COVID and judicial vacancies and having to work harder. So there's a tremendous amount of stress out there. And the State Bar Association, we created a members assistance program, which is a free service to every member of the Bar Association and their immediate household members. And during the first 10 months, we had over 2,000 calls that were made seeking help from various areas of stress and disorder. There have been studies that have been made that California Lawyers Association, the DC Bar, found roughly half of practicing attorneys are experiencing symptoms of depression and anxiety, with approximately 30% of those falling in the mild range and nearly 20% falling in the moderate to severe range. Justice Solomon pointed out the significant amount of statistics that we have in New Jersey: 23% for depression, 49% for isolation, and 49% burnout. And one of the things that Justice Solomon pointed out, and which is really true, part of our world now is we have this work at home and we have different work models, but it also creates isolation, which is, a mental health red flag. But this program that we put in place, it creates the ability for our members to access almost 25,000 interactive resources, free in-person counseling, as much as you want counseling virtually, and free webinars and other educational things, which the court has also been doing, which is important. It's really bringing this to the forefront. A lot of mental health issues, especially with lawyers, we're in a position of authority. Judges, we're in a position of authority that don't want to show a weakness. And when you look at these where we are in our world now, it's very different than it was 30, 40 years ago. Justice Solomon was talking about, when growing up, there was different, you went outside, you conversed, you interacted with people personally. And now we don't have that as much. And we have our first generation now of digital babies. And when I say that, a lot of people grew up, Gen X, they grew up knowing when they were teenagers, but now children 2, 3, they know how to use a cell phone. They know how to use a smartphone. They know how to use an iPad. They start out with this digital knowledge right from the get-go. And I always like to tell this story about how quickly our world works. 40 years ago, 30 years ago, a mailman came to the office and he would drop off mail and you would look at it and your secretary would open it and you'd look at it and give it back to your secretary. They'd mail it to the client. The client would get it 3 days later, and then they would call you up and then you would discuss it. Now we do all of that in 30 seconds, not 3 days. It gets emailed to us. We email it to somebody in our office, or we email it directly to our client. 15 seconds later, the client is calling us, and we're dealing with all these things at such a high pace, and it's really not sustainable. And I think a lot of the young lawyers and people who are coming into this profession, and highlighted again by the pandemic, are seeing that this is something that isn't good for the family. It isn't good for work-life balance. And so people are making adjustments, trying to work from home and make some sense of the pace that we now have as attorneys. And some people, and rightfully so, are creating boundaries. The problem with phones and the technology we have, it's very difficult to have boundaries, reasonable boundaries set up for lawyers between their personal and home life. And those boundaries are also blurred by people who work from home. So there's a lot of difficulties. But one of the things that I wanted to read to you is, New Jersey Lawyers Assistance Program was really created for substance abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, gambling issues. Those are the primary things that New Jersey Lawyers Assistance Program dealt with and created, and also vetting out certain issues when there's candidates for the bar exams. But what we've found is that a lot of the day-to-day stresses in our industry, in our profession, is not necessarily related to alcohol or drug abuse, although it's there. A lot of it is related to just stressors of life. So of the 2,000 calls that we've received, the categories come in on eating disorders, depression, anxiety, grief. On relationship levels, it's marital, interpersonal relationships, family. On domestic violence category, family and children, child care, elder care, alcohol. Of 395 of calls from this year, from January through March, 395, only 6 dealt with alcohol and drug abuse. Work performance, job stress, all of these items are areas that are really creating a lot of mental health issues and wellness issues. And bringing it out in the forefront, talking about it, creating avenues for people to be able to find programs that might be able to help them. Simple counseling sometimes to just work through an issue. Lawyers, we're problem solvers. We're people come to us with problems, we solve them. And so we have a difficulty, and judges also, and have difficulty telling people our problems and how we can resolve those. So creating that kind of confidential ability for people to, and lawyers and people in the legal profession to find an avenue to create places where they can work on these issues and before they get out of hand and before they become a real problem. So we're very delighted in what's going on with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has done a great job. Chief Justice Ravner and Justice Solomon and the rest of the Supreme Court have really embraced this. And I've seen this as I've traveled around the state this year. I think in Passaic County, they have Zumba classes at lunch one day a week. But, it's that thinking of, we've got to think a little bit outside of the box. We have to think about this new generation that's coming up that's looks at things a little differently than when Justice Solomon and Justice Mendez and I grew up, and that social interaction, and also looking at that work-life balance between what's at work, working in the office and from working at home. So I'm very pleased that the Stockton's putting on this program. I'm happy to participate. I'm also very excited to hear about the next segment of this, dealing with the mental health diversion courts, where I think New Jersey is really on the cusp of doing some great things. They've been doing it for a while, but now it's going to be going statewide. And I'm certainly looking forward to hearing about that. And thank you, Judge Mendez, for inviting me to participate today.
Thank you for participating. And we very much appreciate the special relationship that the Hughes Center has with the New Jersey State Bar Association. Thank you very much. Now we're going to transition, as President McCaffrey just mentioned, to the impact of mental health within the court system. And I'm just going to point out a few statistics that I obtained from reading various reports, including the report from the task force. This is an immense issue. On any given day, today, there are 380,000 people incarcerated in our jails around the country with serious mental illness. And the other issue is that people with mental illness in the United States are 10 times more likely to be incarcerated than they are to be hospitalized or on treatment. This is an immense issue. And how are courts reacting to this issue and addressing this issue is something that in New Jersey and across the country has been a tremendous effort. And our next speaker is Judge Nan Waller from Oregon. And Judge Waller is a recipient of the William H. Rehnquist Award for Judicial Excellence, presented by the National Center for State Courts. She's a national leader, having served with the National Judicial Task Force to examine state courts' response to mental illness, created by the Conference of Chief Justices. And Judge Waller oversees a mental health court in the state of Oregon, and she's going to tell us what the great work that has been done in Oregon, and highlight some of the key areas of the report from the National Task Force. Judge Waller, welcome, and thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Judge Mendez. And thank you. It was wonderful to hear the remarks about what's going on in New Jersey and the attention to the mental health of lawyers and judges. And I apologize. Let me get myself up there. Sorry. You know, I practiced my technology, and I knew that that was probably not a wise idea, that I would, and I am on speaker view, so I'm not sure anyone on the tech side can assist me with that, but I'm going to get started. I handle all of our courts' mental health court cases, and we have a consolidated competency docket. So I handle for our criminal courts all of our competency cases. And in fact, that's what I'm in the middle of today. I spent the first 3.5 hours of my day dealing with people in the competency process, trying to find solutions for them, and housing. A number of years ago, I testified before our state legislature that the growing crisis in the competency process was the canary in the coal mine for the greater looming crisis at the intersection of the behavioral health and justice systems. Unfortunately, since then, the coal mine has imploded with the canary in it as the crisis has grown. And there are days when it feels like I am presiding over dockets of despair. Too many individuals are before me with serious mental illness and substance abuse issues, and too little access to the treatment, housing, and supports they need to prevent them from a never-ending cycle between the street, jail, court, and back again. As a judge, I'm often neither able to meet my obligation to meet the needs of the individual in front of me or meet the public safety and well-being needs of our community. And it's hard not to wonder how we got here. There's a New York Times editorial from a few years ago that I think summed it up very well. That when it comes to caring for the mentally ill, the arc of American history has nearly always bent towards failure, concluding that in many ways the criminal justice system has become the only reprieve. And for all judges and probably many lawyers who operate within the intersection of behavioral health and the courts, that is every day that is illustrated that so many people are the only door open to them is the door into jail, and that gets the entire criminal justice system up and running. And we are expected then to provide people the treatment and support that they need. Unfortunately, the behavioral health system is often not well set up to meet the needs of those in the criminal justice system. So I was very excited when I got invited to participate in the National Task Force, because as a judge, I always want to know, what can I do better in my courtroom? How can I better serve the people in front of me, as well as our community? And what are the systemic efforts that need to be taken in order to make sure that we have a system that works, that we are able to get people the services, supports, and treatment that they need? There's a wonderful quote from Justice Catherine Zenoff, who's an appellate judge in Illinois. I believe that judges need to serve as catalysts for change and transformation, not only in our communities, but also at the state and national levels if there is to be continued progress. And I think in this area, at the intersection of behavioral health and the justice system, that is very true. Before I became a judge, and I've been on the bench for a number of decades, somebody suggested that I considered becoming a judge, and I remember blushing at the time, thinking, "Oh gosh, I'm not." I had an image that showed my own bias in terms of, I wasn't an older white man sitting calling the balls and strikes. And if that was still what a judge did primarily, I probably would not have joined the bench. But when from organizations like the National Center for State Courts, the Council for State Government Justice Center, I realized that judges do have a responsibility, not only on the bench, but off the bench to better systems that are not working. I've loved every assignment that I've ever presided over in my years on the bench, and I've done everything on our bench. But it's in my current role, in which I focus on those in the criminal justice system with serious mental health needs, that I found the work on the bench the most compelling, albeit the most frustrating. Because the people coming before me are often unwanted by their families that they've worn out, given the lack of services, by programs who deem them too difficult or too risky to deal with, and by the public who are frustrated and want them out of sight, out of mind. Judge Mendez said, well, the great work in Oregon, and I always like to think that we are doing great work. However, you've probably all paid some attention to our great experiment of decriminalization of possession of controlled substances, and now the recriminalization, because things were not going very well. So I hope that we can do good work, but it's really given me an opportunity, and I think all judges, to study what is it that we need in order for us to meet our obligation, not just to the individuals coming before us, but also to our communities. The National Task Force was that opportunity to give me to see the broader national level. And I would urge all of you, if you have an interest of this intersection and have people coming in front of you or represent people who are in the criminal justice system or in the justice system with behavioral health needs, that you look to the many, many tools that the National Task Force put together. There are over, I think, 100 different tools that you can use. great resources. And there's a wonderful publication called Judges Leading Change that really talks about how as judges can we use our ability to convene conversations about behavioral health that can lead to change and better outcomes for the people that we have responsibility for. My view from the bench has allowed me to see that wreckage at the intersection of the behavioral health and justice systems. And I see how the justice system can become a never-ending highway of pain as it maneuvers people through a journey with no off-ramp to effective support and treatment, just periodic law enforcement stops and the occasional stay in jail. One of the things that, notwithstanding our lack of sufficient resources and housing for the people that are coming in front of me, and that's what I dealt all morning with. Somebody brought his entire shopping cart about 3 feet above it with all of his worldly possessions because he had no place to stay. And I wish that I had been able to say, I have housing for you today. Unfortunately, I was not, but at least we got him hooked up with somebody who may be able to assist him with housing. But one of the things that has really given me great hope is the power of procedural justice. When I first became a judge, a justice on our Supreme Court shared with me the following injunction that he said was from an Egyptian pharaoh. Not everything that one prays for can be granted, but a good hearing can ease the heart. And that sentiment really resonated with me as a new judge because of sometimes the work that I had done as a lawyer and what I had seen in representing people who I represented people in legal services. I represented people when I worked for the public defender's office who really sometimes needed to be heard. The words that Justice Solomon said about the level of loneliness for all of us having come through the pandemic and now dealing with technology, which I agree is good, but often isolates us, I think is tenfold for the people that I see coming before me. They are some of the loneliest people I've ever met. They are, from the public, the sentiment is often out of sight, out of mind. They feel invisible. So when I heard about procedural justice, and you're all from New Jersey and you have probably ready access to all of the work that Tom Tyler at Yale did on looking at procedural justice and the power of procedural justice. And what the research found was that it's more important for people to be treated with respect, to believe that they have the opportunity to have their voice heard, to understand what is happening and to be in front of a neutral decider than winning. And you can see that sometimes as a judge when, even when people are winning, if they don't feel like they've been treated with respect, they are still frustrated and lacking confidence. And for all of us involved in the justice system, lawyers, judges, everyone else, we know that we have an obligation, not just to the people in front of us, but to our greater community of increasing confidence in the state courts. You probably all know that confidence in the state courts, while still exceeding confidence in other parts of government, has fallen. In 2018, 76% of the public had confidence in state courts. It has dropped in 2023 to 61%. Procedural justice is one of those tools that I think increases public confidence, both at the micro level, what's happening in a courtroom and how we are treating people, and at the macro level, explaining what we are doing as the public is watching what is occurring in our courtrooms. I'm going to give you a very short story. I have a probationer, Bill, who's in my mental health court, who came to court one day, this was, I think, during the middle of the pandemic, height of the pandemic, and it was incredibly frigid out. He had no hearing. He begged to be taken into jail because he was, in his words, in every kind of crisis. He was exhausted, dehydrated, cold, and hungry. He lost his medication that helped calm his mind. He broke down in tears, begging to go to jail when I gently explained that I had no basis to take him into custody. There were no doors open to him that day to address his mental illness, his substance abuse, his lack of housing, and his hunger. And we did the best that we could. My staff and I found water and food, made calls to find help for him. While Bill's visit didn't fit into a typical use of a courtroom and a judge. There are lessons to learn from his story. We have invested significant, although not nearly sufficient, resources into the behavioral health system. Too often, however, those in the criminal justice system with behavioral health issues are literally left out in the cold when programs and housings reject them because of the acuity of their symptoms or the stigma of having criminal charges. The bills in our communities, in the eyes of many, are simply a problem, a nuisance that we need to get off the streets. Bill continues to come to court more regularly than anybody else that I have on probation. He comes often when he has no hearing. And he's told me he doesn't want to graduate from mental health court, although I've told him he can always come back to visit. He comes not because we've had solutions. We have not had all that he has needed to resolve his issues. But I think he continues to come because we recognize Bill's humanity. And in doing so, we provide Bill with the dignity and hope that he needs to keep going. And for me, that is fundamentally the power of procedural justice. And I think that Justice Solomon's description of the loneliness for the people that I see, they are so lonely. And I think part of what we can do, even without resources, even without all that we need to meet the needs of people who have significant behavioral health issues, is that we can continue to treat them with procedural justice and assure that those within our courthouses who are also interacting with them apply the principles of procedural justice. I would like to say that we are 100% successful in our mental health court, and of course that would be not true. But we do a pretty good job of dealing with people who are seriously mentally ill, who have serious criminal charges. And I think a large part of that is, again, we try our best to provide the treatment and housing that they desperately need, but we also always treat everyone with respect. And so I would urge, if you haven't reviewed the work of Tom Tyler and procedural justice, that you do so. I think that we have obligations because of this disconnect between the justice system and the behavioral health systems of who should be treated and how, that we absolutely all take action in terms of advocating both at the national level and the state level, that the recommendations coming out of the National Task Force be implemented to assure that people in the criminal justice system get what they need. And I would again agree with Justice Solomon that while we certainly need to increase access to behavioral health treatment and services, that we also need to assure that the people that we are serving feel connected to our court as we have them in front of us, so that they are aware of what needs to happen next, what they do after they leave the courtroom, how they can manage. When we were building our beautiful new courthouse, we tried to take into account the principles of procedural justice because we knew that the navigating the courthouse is sometimes difficult and discouraging, and puts people, by the time they get into a courtroom, they are shut down and not ready to listen. And part of that was to build in a legal resource center. We knew that lawyers and judges were no longer using the law library. So instead, we developed a legal resource center to give people that place where they could go, where they could talk to somebody who could help translate the language of legalese into something that they could understand as to their obligations. They don't provide legal advice, but they do provide that guidance and navigation that I think is so necessary. You're going to hear from Judge Bianco in just a moment. And years ago, I heard him speak at a conference, and I have taken what he said to heart. He was looking at a program in northern Italy and thinking about and trying to implement it in Hollywood. And the principles of that program in Italy, it's a World Health Organization site, was that everyone with serious mental illness, and probably all of us as human beings, needs housing, social connection, relationship, and purpose. So again, hearkening back to Justice Solomon, those needs for connection with each other. And for the mentally ill, I think that that is vitally important. For the people coming in front of me, not only do we look at how do we treat everyone coming in with respect and make sure that they feel heard and connected to all of us in court, but we also look at making sure that they're not bored, that they have some purpose. For some people, given the level of capacity that they have, that may be volunteering or getting up and walking around the block. I've had people decide that they are going to, I have all of their art displayed in my courtroom. So I have a whole art section. I have people bringing their music that they've created. All of that is with the intent of, again, giving people back the humanity that they've needed. And I think I'm about out of time. Judge Mendez, am I?
Yes,
I
you
could go on forever. I love
know you
what I
can.
do, and I wish you all the best. I look forward to hearing about the other things that are being done. But I think that we have an obligation in terms of the people that we deal with to work on increasing that connection, increasing confidence in state courts. And I listened all morning to individuals telling me that they had no confidence in what we were doing because they were mentally ill. We couldn't get them connected. So I take the work that I've learned from the National Center and I'm doing everything I can at the policy level of our court and continuing to work at the national level to make sure that people have that access. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for participating all the way from the state of Oregon, and your words about the kindness that we can as judges show and the respect and treating people with respect and dignity is so important. And if you can just get that message and the message of thinking outside the box at times and realizing that the court system has to do more in terms of addressing these societal issues, and we certainly have. We're about to begin the presentation by our second out-of-state judge, Judge Bianco, another outstanding judge from the state of California. He has he runs he presides over a mental health court in a criminal setting, seeking to obtain treatment for individuals and provide them with services as an alternative to incarceration. Judge Bianco was also a member of the National Task Force, and he has worked closely with the Office of Diversion and Reentry in the state of California, in Los Angeles. And we, before he comes on, and I see his picture, before he starts speaking, we're going to actually play a short video about that program. So let's go. Excellent.
You don't know what's going to happen out here in these streets. You know, it's survival out here.
I was originally from Texas. My goal was to hopefully go to school, but I got robbed in LA and I ended up on the street. I didn't have the money or the friends out here really to help me out with that problem.
I used to get bullied a lot, and you know, I really wanted to fit in. And that was the beginning of me drinking and then using. I eventually got diagnosed with mental health disorder, bipolar.
I'm suffering through abuse and don't even know what abuse is. I never knew what abuse was. You know, when a person says, hey, you need to go through a mental health, I knew then I had issues, big time.
I've been diagnosed with a major depressive disorder, insomnia, and an anxiety disorder.
Being homeless and having a mental health situation, it's like you're locked in a box.
Being that way and being in that sort of quiet desperation of, you know, I need this medication, I do need help, and it being so hard to convey that to people.
Unfortunately, here in Los Angeles County, there's an estimated 47,000 people who are living on the streets. When a police officer encounters, let's say, someone who is disturbing the peace, who has a mental illness, if they take them to jail, they can book them in 30 minutes and be on their way.
It's a harsh thing to say, but jail has almost been like a second home.
What typically happens with a person coming out of jail, then about 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night, they walk out of the jail. If you've been to the LA County Jail on Boucher Street, the only thing close by is Skid Row.
Getting released and not having an opportunity to participate in treatment, and the cycle kept continuing.
This vicious cycle of a revolving door, in and out of of our institutions.
There are a lot of people that we believe shouldn't be in jail.
You see guys who really belong there, and then you see guys who, kind of like in my situation, stuck.
It's unfair, it's unethical. There has to be a better approach.
They have this new program called the ODR program. And I says, what is that? And it says, we think that if you had your own place, you won't be out doing crime. It says, have you ever had your own place? I says, no, never.
It's surreal, you know, it's like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it, but it's real.
There is a need for the continuum of services, where a person who lives upstairs can come downstairs and receive mental health services.
They get a caseworker that stays with them for life. I know no other program like that.
Therapy is about second chances, right? And a lot of our guys are seeking that second chance.
I've been able to experience and to grow and to get my life back. I mean, it's unprecedented.
I don't think we ever really understood just how many people inside the jail were eligible. Our study looked at the entire mental health population in the jail, which was over 5,000 people. Over half of them would potentially have successful cases.
That's important because really what the community wants, they want safety.
From a public safety perspective, it's actually safer to have them housed. And emergency room visits are very expensive. Jail stays are very expensive. Associated court costs, policing costs, arrest costs, we could go on and on. But if you just house somebody and you provide them with medication, it's actually affordable.
That's rewarding. It's fulfilling. Why wouldn't we all want that? This is an innovative and intelligent approach, and it's working. So far, we've safely diverted almost 2,000 people through the Office of Diversion Reentry, and this is spreading around the country.
These needs are in Chicago, they're in New York, they're in Miami, they're all over.
I think it should be important for all of us to want everyone in society, to the degree that they're capable of living a life with dignity and purpose.
It's really about righting some wrongs in the criminal justice system that have been going on for far too long.
Well, I remember I almost laughed when I got offered the program. I was like, is this for real? You're gonna get me a housing and medical and all that? And they're like, yeah, and you can get started all over again. It was jaw-dropping.
I says, don't play with me. When I get in trouble, I go to prison. They schedule me for release. And they picked me up. I still didn't believe it. I says, they're not gonna release me, you know. And they came and they said, Baker, for release. And excuse me for a minute. It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Josh Bianco.
Thank you. It's really great to be here and join you and let you know a little bit about what we're doing here in Los Angeles. I know a little bit about New Jersey. I grew up on Long Island, not too far away. And I looked at some numbers. You know, Los Angeles County is a county, it's a big county. We have about the same population as the state of New Jersey. We're both a little bit north of 9 million residents. One of the things that's very different, I think, here in Los Angeles is, you know, the number I got for 2023 for New Jersey was that in the whole state, there were about 10,000 homeless people. And in Los Angeles last year, that number is about 75,000. So the number you heard in the video just now, 47,000, is a ways out of date. But in any event, the challenges in New Jersey and in Los Angeles and Oregon and everywhere else in the country are really very similar. You know, in my view, this all started back in the 60s and 70s when in the US we closed all the institutions, which really needed to happen. And the plan was to create a community mental health system to replace those terrible institutions. And it was a great plan. It just never was carried out. So we're all dealing with this lack of adequate treatment, and the criminal justice system is really bearing the brunt of that problem. So what I want to do is tell you about 3 things that we're doing in Los Angeles that I think are potentially going to be helpful to you in your work in New Jersey. The first is that we tend to use centralized mental health courts. And obviously this is not a thing that's just in Los Angeles. You know, there are courts that are doing this all over the place. And I'm not sure, you may be doing this in New Jersey, but I think when you're working with a mentally ill population, having a centralized court that's dealing with one type of case is really, really helpful. You know, you look at what happens, you know, for instance, for me as a judge, dealing with one type of case, one population all the time, it's really helpful. I think most judges in my courthouse who are, you know, longtime criminal judges might not have the sense of, you know, who represents a true risk and who might represent a risk that can be adequately managed in a community program. That's in part because everyone in my court, lawyers, providers, even bailiffs, and me as the judge, learn to trust the providers. And we know what they're going to do, how they're going to handle things, what we can expect from them in terms of communication. And I think that centralized mental health court is a really valuable model. The second thing we do in Los Angeles is we treat different people differently. So if there's someone that's, you know, involved in a case, whether they're in jail or out of jail, but they're low risk and low need, let's say they have their own housing, you know, with family or what have you, and all they really need is kind of a connection to services. If you give them that opportunity, they'll take the ball and run with it. Those are folks that can be treated in all sorts of criminal court contexts. But what we do with my court is we use the agency that you heard about in the video, the Office of Diversion and Reentry, or what we call ODR. And ODR in our system is kind of reserved for the highest risk, highest need population in our criminal justice system. So the folks that are recommended by ODR to be treated in my court are all homeless. They all have a serious mental illness. And they are all charged with a felony offense, usually a serious violent felony offense. The typical case or a typical offense for someone that comes to my court is an assault with a deadly weapon, let's say a hammer or a knife. Usually someone got hurt. Could be a robbery of a convenience store. Most people have a very serious criminal history. There are people that have been in and out of prison their entire lives. And even cases like attempted murder are not out of the question. So we, I think, do something that's unique here, which is that we'll take on cases that I think in other jurisdictions, people would say, you know, there's no way. How could we ever safely manage a person that's charged with that sort of thing or that has that kind of history or both? How could we safely manage them in the community? But I think over time, what ODR has shown is that they are able to do that. And so that's the third thing I want to talk about is what's unique about ODR. And I think you heard about some of the key elements of this in the video. The model that ODR uses is, first of all, everyone has a case manager for life. And the case manager is sort of the person's point person to help sort of assess what they need and help get them connected with everything that they need. So they make sure that they're going to see their psychiatrist. They make sure they're taking their medication. They make sure that if they can get government benefits, that they help them with that SSI process. If they need to get an identification card, they do that. If the person, is able to get a job, they assist them with a job search. The second thing is housing, which obviously is really key. As someone said in that video, with housing, the risk of someone reoffending goes down quite dramatically. And so the model is that once someone is accepted into the ODR program, and that's a court decision, that's my decision on a day like today, which is what we call the intake day. So if I order someone into the ODR program, they get picked up from the jail in about 2 weeks, and they go to what we call interim housing. So that's a house in the community. ODR has rented various houses all over Los Angeles. And these are places where they're able to sort of modify them to, have enough bedrooms and beds so that something like 20 or 30 people can live there. So it's congregate housing. There's a staff that's on site that helps people, with their sort of day-to-day needs and kind of keeps people mostly on track. If they do well in interim housing, then in about a year, then they're eligible to get their own apartment. And that's the folks that you saw in that video are at that stage where they have their own permanent housing of their own. They get to keep that for life. And so when I'm talking to people on a day like today and I'm saying, okay, hey, this is what's being recommended for you, what I tell them is, after your court case is over, which is usually, 2 years down the road, you get to keep your case manager, you get to keep your services, and you get to keep your apartment for life. So it's a huge incentive for people to take advantage of this opportunity. And I think what ODR has shown over time, I was involved with ODR, way back when and through the years, but this particular program that I'm in now, I've been working with for about a year with these very high risk, high need folks. But what they've shown long before I got here a year ago is they're able to safely manage this population. The number of sort of bad outcomes, if you will, is very, very limited. It's never going to be zero. That's just not the way life works, or that's not the way people are. But their outcomes are generally extremely positive. And the whole idea of this is to get people out of the criminal justice system who never should have been in the criminal justice system, who should have had housing and services and help right from the get-go. And so when you think about it, and part of my thinking when I'm deciding whether I should give someone this opportunity or not is, if I put them in the ODR program, I have a reasonable chance that they're going to do well, and they're going to do well long-term. The other possibility is that they, go through the normal course and probably end up in prison. No one gets better in prison. And the reentry, once someone's coming out of prison, particularly if they don't have any resources, they don't have a family to go back to, they don't have housing, they're not connected with medication management, they're not connected with services for substance abuse, their chances of reoffending are very, very high. So what ODR does is they provide this opportunity, which is much cheaper, much more humane, and where the outcomes are much, much better. And the last thing I'll leave you with, and I think this is perhaps the most important thing that I'll say, is ODR started through a collaborative process. We were lucky. Our DA, Jackie Lacey, who was on that video, she, decided to get everyone together. And it really helped, obviously, having the chief prosecutor leading the effort. But it was really a collaboration among all of the justice partners that led to the county creating ODR. And 10 years later, they've treated many, many, many thousands of people in their program. I have something like 600 or 700 people under my supervision right now. So it's going quite well, and I would really encourage all of you in New Jersey to collaborate, and because I think this is possible anywhere. So Judge Mendez, if we have any time for questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Judge Bianco. And I appreciate your participation. This is a very unique perspective from LA in terms of what you're doing there. A lot of people around the country, as you know, are doing similar things, but not exactly. And we're all learn from each other. The point that you made about working closely with the stakeholders, in the county prosecutor, for example, or the DA, key partner in this process in terms of getting things done. Service providers, key partner in the process as well. And and the importance for the public to understand the success of the program that ultimately ends up saving money. I mean, when we talk about almost 400,000 people incarcerated with mental illness on any given day, the cost of that is astronomical. And many of these alternative diversionary programs cost a lot less to get it done, and it's the right thing to do. So thank you very much. I appreciate your participation and fantastic video. And we're going to move on to the last segment of the program today. And the first part of the last segment will be presented by the retired judge, Mark Sampson, a judge here in Atlantic County for many years, and served as a recovery court judge. And he has, in my view, the skills and the traits that are essential for serving as a judge. And that is, he cares, and he wants to do meaningful work that changes the life of the people that come before him. And having said that, there's a video on the JOBS program that he's now, even in his retirement, actively participating in, a program that was started initially, the genesis of that program in Atlantic County. So Daria, can you get the video on? Thank you very much.
How would you like to go and show up somewhere where you have 80% retention after a year?
In New Jersey's vibrant economy, the challenge of finding committed and skilled workers is ever present. But hidden in plain sight is a solution that's reshaping the workforce.
Through the JOBS program, it's really given a second chance to someone who didn't perceive themselves of having a second chance.
This solution challenges the stigma surrounding individuals with a past, offering a path to meaningful employment.
I was blown away from the JOBS program. They're engaged in breaking the cycle of people in and out of the system. And they really, I believe, want people to succeed.
I know I'm valuable, and just because I've had those setbacks in life doesn't mean I can't achieve what anybody else in society achieves.
The clientele that we work with are motivated, have their resume, have their work experience, they're sent for job training if necessary, and they're ready to work.
The story of the JOBS program is really set forth in one statistic. How many people are on probation in the state of New Jersey? It's 130,000 people.
Probation is all about changing behaviors that lead to criminal activity. And through the JOBS program, we're actually seeing people are getting gainful employment, benefits, paid time off.
I've seen it time and time again. People just feel that they have more value when they're steadily employed than when they don't.
We're better workers. We work harder. We value the job. We feel so lucky to have that.
Courage is not the absence of fear, but doing what you have to do anyway. So I didn't know where I was going to end up. I just knew that I didn't want to be afraid of it.
Opportunities that we are presenting are significant career-building type jobs.
This is not charity, this is good business. Many of these people really just simply needed an opportunity, and we needed the employees.
Employers who partner with the JOBS program discover a hiring process that is not only personal, but also deeply effective, ensuring that the individuals they meet are not just potential employees, but future success stories.
I hired 6 in total about a year ago, and I have 5 left. I lost one. You know, she had a tough time, she had challenges. But the other 5, they still show up every day. They're there. They're not on their phones. They're 15 minutes early. And they're happy. And these are real people. You know, they're good people.
I feel confident that there are many employers that would say there's an advantage to people being under our supervision. And that is the accountability factor. And that is when I mentioned before about our responsibility to motivate. Right? That goes along with it. You know, you're checking in with your officer regularly. One of the questions your officer will always ask you is, how's your job going?
Most issues happen in the first 6 months to 2 years, and most of them are all around either training or money. And most of the time, the money piece is de minimis on the scale if you have an investment in that human being. When you make this one of the defining factors to get business, the market will move to it. And we see it all the time.
I think as an owner and an employer, you have to dig in with everybody. I went back to basics when I went with the jobs program. I did weekly follow-ups. Where can we be better? Where are you happy? Where are you not happy? And they were receptive.
So this has been such a success for me. It's so much easier to hold my head up high now and go out into the community and be confident of myself and feel like I'm valuable.
In a world where hiring often feels disconnected, the jobs program reconnects employers with the heart of workforce development, people. It's about seeing potential, not just profiles. Let's continue to invest in the promise of a workforce empowered by opportunity and transformation.
Excellent. Josh Sampson. Are you turn on your there
I am there. Okay. Hi. Thank you very much, Judge Mendez. I'm going to tell this story of New Jersey's Recovery Court and the story of jobs program in two stories, and they're very much related. When I first started in Recovery Court, I would ask people as we're going through our colloquy when they plead into drug court for usually some sort of drug offense in New Jersey, possession very rarely, but more often possession with intent or distribution of drugs. I would ask them, where do you work? And not surprisingly, these people were all assessed as being having a substance abuse disease, and therefore they were not working. But then I would ask the question, the average age of people going into Recovery Court, New Jersey is about 35, which is surprising. The reality is they had not committed enough serious crimes to make it worthwhile. There was always a stigma against what was called drug court at that time. And the story of it becoming Recovery Court was once again a jobs story. So the surprising thing, I'd say, well, tell me what your employment history is so we know what you want to do. Because I had an idea of trying to create some kind of a jobs program, mostly with the gaming industry, which was in Atlantic City. And then approximately 86% of the people who pled in, and I had a very large drug court program at that time, which subsequently became Recovery Court, of about 1,000 people in Atlantic and Cape May counties, which was by far the biggest one in New Jersey. And I had to, get Judge Mendez, who was my assignment judge, who was my boss, essentially. I had to, give him a defibrillator every once in a while as we got more and more people in the court. And then what we did is we started to connect them with game after they'd been in recovery and not using substances for 6 months. We would get them jobs in the gaming industry, and we can track our success over 3 years. We started out approximately 50% or just below 50% of the people who began drug court completed drug court. That meant 50% failed out for usually using drugs and then being sent to state prison. We changed the name of the program to Recovery Court with the permission of the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court and Judge Grant. And we used that name to basically get people jobs in the gaming industry. Why? Because it sounded better. What's in a word? There's a lot in a word. And at the end of 3 years of running that program as Recovery Court, we increased our completion rate. People who graduated from drug court completed the program in approximately 3 years. It was also reduced to 3 years from what it had previously been, which was 5 years. And the graduation rate went up to over 90%. So it was a quantifiable difference of people having a job. People were proud of their job. People felt needed, wanted, and they were able to support their families. And they were able to get jobs with benefits, and therefore they were able to provide benefits for their families. The second story I'll tell you is somehow through a series of very difficult things to comprehend, me and a woman by the name of Brenda Beecham, who is the statewide director of the probation department, were invited because in some Montclair State University, who is a member of our jobs team in North Jersey, we now have the jobs program throughout the state of New Jersey in all 15 judicial vicinages, all 21 counties. So Montclair University professor was a member of the American Society of Criminology, And they took me and Brenda Beecham. Now, Brenda is smart, knows a lot about criminology. I do not, very frankly. To appear and to speak before the American Society of Criminology, which was meeting in Philadelphia, which is very close to where I reside, not so close to where Brenda resides. We got there and we were on a panel on recidivism. What reduces recidivism? You know, it's the great struggle we've had in the court system for 100 years, and it's 200 years. It's still going on. And the recidivism rates in New Jersey are extremely high. And the recidivism rates of those who have been on our traditional probation program without a jobs emphasis have been very high. So we were on a panel for the reduction of recidivism, and there was one of the groups there, they were all college-related academics, said, well, you know, it's obviously neonatal care. We have a program, we devised a program which will cost $1.5 trillion over 6 years, and we can, you know, improve neonatal care in America. That'll definitely reduce recidivism. There was somebody, and these are all absolutely correct answers. Then there was one on homelessness. It's a criminogenic factor. It's acknowledged as the second biggest criminogenic factor, and it's homelessness. We can cure homelessness in America. This is unfortunately going to be somewhat expensive, like $30 trillion over 10 years. It was a huge amount of money, which, you know, can you imagine the political problems of getting that passed? And then we were the last on the agenda, and the one before us was the mental health, and we've heard some answers to the mental health question. Without question, that is the leading criminogenic factor. That's the factor that creates criminality, and people not observing the law and creating crimes against other people, and very difficult to address. And that their program was many trillions of dollars, doing it over many years, a program that would have probably embraced some of the ideas that the judges who have spoken here endorse, and they're correct answers, but difficult to implement. So Brenda and I talked, and we had the jobs program statewide now in existence for a couple of years. And we said, what if it's just as easy as getting people a job? Now, that does not going to work for everybody. I get it. It's not going to work for the profoundly mentally ill and many homeless people. It's not going to work but for a vast quantity, and in our situation, over 4,000 New Jerseyans, we have gotten them a job, and we've stopped the cycle of recidivism for those 4,000 people. And we've ramped up. We have a system of employment specialists in all of our judicial vicinages, which embraces all of our counties. The sole job of those employment specialists is to make contact with employers and to get our people placed in jobs at a living wage with benefits. That is our mantra. It has been very successful. We're keeping statistics now to prove how successful it is. And what I would like to do is then compare those statistics with recidivism statistics. All that's being done by our QAA department, which I never knew existed, but it does to keep track of all the numbers, so we can report to the legislature how successful we're being. And could this be an answer? It's certainly not the answer. I don't know if there is an answer to what makes people, violate the norms of society. And I'm sure mental health and homelessness are two big issues. Can some of those issues be addressed by simply getting them a job, waking up the employer community in New Jersey or Oregon or California to say, hire people, give them a second chance, hire them, and stop the recidivism, make our cities better, our towns better, our suburbs better, the farms better, everybody. Everybody is impacted by what's going on in this country now that has diminished the standard of living of almost everybody who walks down the street in our country. We think employment has a big role to play, and the Recovery Court program led to a jobs program, which now may lead us to bigger and better results. It's correct. I am retired at this point. I'm doing this as a volunteer. Judge Glenn Grant, the director of the Administrative Office of the Courts in New Jersey, is the chairman of the Jobs Committee. I'm the vice chairman. We're working together. He is extremely enthusiastic and helpful in this program, and I'm working on it every day. And we're hopeful that this approach will bear fruit. That's really my story. I want to thank Judge Mendez for asking me to be here today. I love telling the story because I think it has some real possibilities of making vast changes in our state. Thank you.
one question, Josh Sampson, that I'd like to ask you is, how receptive has the employer community, the business community, been to this program?
I will tell you honestly, and we just spoke with Wakefern, which is ShopRite, the biggest pharmacy, the biggest, they have pharmacies too, the biggest supermarket company in New Jersey. I don't know how many locations they have throughout the state, but it's very, very large. We spoke to them today. They said, yes, we have never. Now, I have made the pitch myself. I've made it with Judge Grant, who's been willing to come and make the pitch, which is very difficult to bring judges. I'm retired, so I'm a nobody, but bringing Judge Grant there. And in one case, when we were trying to make a partnership with all of the colleges and universities and community colleges in New Jersey, the Chief Justice came with us to make the pitch. So we're all willing to make it. No one, Judge Mendez, has ever said no to us. Nobody has said that what we're doing does not make sense. Nobody has said that this is an approach which will appeal to all elements of our society. It will appeal to Republicans and to Democrats. A job is, I will quote Judge Mendez, who is also very active. A job is a social program that works. And that's what we're finding, and our results are very encouraging.
Thank you very much, Josh Sampson. And again, thank you for all you do. And this is, again, a wonderful program that is really making a difference in people's lives. We're moving on to hear from a local service provider and we have Ileana James, Associate Director of Justice Involved Services from Jewish Family Services here in Atlantic County. And Ileana, you have the floor. You have to.
Thank you, Judge Mendez, for allowing me to be a part of the panel. Hi, my name is Ayana. I am the Associate Director for our Justice Involved Services with Jewish Family Service. I oversee our Central Municipal Court program, which I will be discussing, our Mental Health Justice Involved Case Management program, and as well as our reentry services in our local jail and our ACT program, which is in collaboration with ACPD. Central Municipal Courts of Atlantic County opened up in January of 2022 and was the first regional court to be implemented in New Jersey. Central Municipal Courts hears all the cases from 10 local towns, and Judge Sanson and Judge Willie entrusted JFS to complete comprehensive assessments for individuals who have court hearings within the court system. Clients are referred by the prosecutors and the judges, as well as themselves when they come in needing assistance from the team members who are at the courts 5 days a week to provide assistance. Over the past year, approximately 150 people have been engaged in services and linked to various things such as mental health, substance, financial resources, employment, other court systems if they have had troubles with trying to resolve those cases, as well as housing. Our Mental Health Justice Involved Service program is a funded program through the Division of New Jersey's Mental Health and Addiction Services, and we have been contracted to provide case management services for individuals who have severe and persistent mental health disorders. The goal of the program is to establish engagement with individuals who have history in justice involvement and need support with getting linked to services that will provide them with stability to not encounter similar situations that either landed them in jail or had them obtain charges that they had to handle while in the community. The team members for MHJIS serve approximately 70 to 80 individuals per month to help them meet court mandates. The next program is our reentry services, which is contracted through our local Atlantic County Justice Facility. And we serve all of the inmates who are currently there, whether it be inmates who have mental health, which then are referred to our MHJIS case management program, but not necessarily Our reentry team is there to help do discharge planning so that when inmates are released back into the community, they have the necessary resources to sustain their lives. We also have a grant through Burlington County to assist the females that they have housed at our local facility. And we provide substance treatment with connection from John Brooks Recovery, and to help them obtain services in their local area to not come back to the local jail. Reentry this year served over 500 inmates that have been linked to services while incarcerated, as well as we have been collaborating with Superior Court's At-Risk Initiative and Mental Health Court, and we were able to serve 181 clients over 2023. The ACT program, which is in collaboration with Atlantic City Police Department, is our Atlantic City community team, and that is an outreach support to assist and respond to people who are experiencing mental health crisis in the moment. The team members are there to offer real-time clinical assessments, linkages to resources, and referrals to appropriate programming. The primary goal of ACT is to be able to engage more individuals who are experiencing mental health conditions, as well as co-occurring disorders, to get linked to services through street outreach, mobile outreach, and at home. The ACT team was able to engage over 2,000 individuals in the past year and was able to link them to various services to obtain stability. I also wanted to speak on our PATH program because mental health, homelessness, justice involvement all go together. And our PATH program has made a great impact on our local community. PATH is also a contracted program through the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services. JFS has our local PATH program, but PATH is nationwide and is served throughout the state. PATH is a case management program for individuals who have severe and persistent mental health conditions and are either at risk of being unhoused or currently unhoused. And the team members for our PATH program engage and help obtain housing for about 55 people per month. That is all of the programs that JFS has to offer individuals in the community that are also involved in the court system, in the jail, and as well as just local community.
Iana, are you in person at the municipal court?
So I am in person at our Atlantic County Justice Facility, but we do have two ladies who are at the courthouse Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30.
So there's an immediate referral that comes from the court to those that takes place immediately at that point. Is that right? I think we lost you. I think we lost her. The PATH program, and if you haven't come across that program, please read up on it. It's outstanding. And I see Josh Sampson.
I can respond to your last question, even though Ilana seems to have gotten cut off. There are immediate referrals made under the aegis of the judge sitting there, and these people, and basically they're aimed at three types of defendants, which abound in our municipal courts, as in everybody's municipal courts. People who have mental health issues, those who have domestic violence issues, and those that have substance abuse issues appear there first before they get to the Superior Court level. And if we can address, the theory being, if we can address those issues at the municipal court level before so much damage is done and the threats of prison and jail are realistically there, we may be able to really help a lot of people, and also not only help people, but also, save our state a huge amount of money that incarceration costs. it may be more in LA or in California, but in New Jersey, it was just in the paper the other day. It was $74,000 a person to keep somebody in jail for a year. I'd rather send some people's kids to I don't even want to mention the school, but the University of Michigan. I mean, I want to be even-handed here, but rather than pay $74,000 to incarcerate somebody, it's insane.
No question about it. And I think, Ms. James, anything else?
Oh, you're back. You're back. I try to cover for you while you're away.
I appreciate you, Judge Sanson.
I'll disappear now.
Judge Mendez, that was it. I just wanted to be able to provide a description of 5 programs that JFS has to offer that is also encompassed in the court system.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I just wanted to highlight both of these programs. And from Stockton's perspective, I know that Judge Sampson is aware that even the university has embraced the jobs program as well, and their support of Recovery Court. So we're very pleased with that. At this point, I'd like to conclude the program. I invite our interim director to say some final words.
Thank you, Judge Mendez. Thank you, everyone. We managed to conclude this within 2 hours, which was quite a feat because I know we covered a lot of ground today, from the mental health of people in the legal profession to initiatives aimed to assist and divert people with mental illnesses and substance abuse problems from the criminal justice system. So we really covered a wide range today. Thank you to those who are watching live. We will have a video recording of this program archived on our website and our YouTube channel for later viewing. So we hope that this recording can be a resource in the future for everyone. Thank you to our terrific panelists for taking the time today to share your insight. We really appreciate it, and we will see you next time.